Jack Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today we're going to do a different type of personal carry holster. And I'm going to do an across the body bag, so that if you wear pull-up shorts or something like that, you don't want to wear a shoulder holster with a jacket on. You can do this like a crossbody bag and it'll be concealed. So it would work for any what I figure a small frame handgun. This one is a Sky CPX2, no magazine, unloaded for safety. So that's one we're going to use for today. I'm not going to make a pattern. I'm just going to go ahead and start putting this bag together, and we'll see how it turns out. So come on in and let's get started. Alright, so what I'm going to do, this is my thought process, is I want to fold this over like so. I'll stitch it, cut it and stitch it on the sides, and I want to make sure that I have plenty of room so I could use this for several different small frame handguns. So you could even use it for a small frame revolver. And then this part will fold over and snap here. Then I'll add some D-rings to it and a strap, and then that way we can carry it across our body. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll start marking this. Again, I want to leave plenty of room here. I'm going to push this down and even this side up. Then I'll know where to cut the other side. So I'm leaving a certain amount hang out instead of it being all the way covered up, so I make it easier to get that out of there if need be. So I don't want to leave too much hanging out, because then when I fold this over, you'll be able to see everything, and the whole point is to be concealed. So I think I'll go to that point, and then over here I'm just going to take my straight edge and I'm going to do this stitching. I'm going to attempt to do it inside out, so that'll make it a little bit smaller on the sides when I turn it inside out. So all I did was score that so I know where to cut it. So that's the next thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to just go ahead, take my straight edge and cut that piece right now, so I can try to keep this process rolling. This is some nice leather I got. It's pre-dyed brown, nice. It's probably 9 ounce, but it's nice and soft. Got it from Kentucky Leather and Hides. Check them out, www.kentuckyleatherandhides.com. They have everything you need. So let's go ahead and put this back up here, and then I need to mark it so I can cut the other side. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll that over like so. Keep this side even. And then what I'm going to do on this side is I'm going to attempt to go ahead and cut this through both thicknesses of the leather. So I get a nice straight cut through both, just like so. Then I can go ahead and take this outside piece off. And again, I'm doing this with no pattern. I'm just cutting it and fitting it as I go. So let's go ahead and fold this over, get an idea where this needs to cut. I want to keep this fairly close to this edge, and I'm going to have kind of a curved flap. I don't want it perfectly square. So I'm going to grab a pin here, and as this folds over, I want to kind of follow that line there. So let's go ahead and I'll cut that, and I'm going to freehand that. And I'll match the other side with this side. Again, it's a lot of dry fitting and trial and error doing it this way, but you would spend a lot of time making a pattern for a one-off also. So again, this flap would just snap here. So I am going to take a roll of tape, and that's what I'm going to use for my pattern. Again, you notice it's a lot of dry fitting. I'll cut this again. I'll just cut right on that line. And you could use French curves, freehand-it, whatever you want to do as far as your flap is concerned, however you want to design that. Again, some of it is determined by you know, what kind of leather you have too. So I'm going to go ahead and see if we're about in the center of that, the actual pouch itself. And we're not. We're ways off from center. So I'm going to go ahead and go across here. I'm going to measure. That is 2¼ inches from the fold down here at the bottom. So that gives me an idea where I need to be. So I'm going to put my straight edge on there, and I'm going to go all the way across and make this even. Then I can cut my arc on the other side. So let's go ahead and cut that. And again, this is not using a pattern. So basically what you're doing is you're building your pattern as you go. And this side, a lot of measuring. Down to the bottom of the flap is 3 inches. So I'll do the same on this side. To the bottom of the flap. And I want to try as close as possible to get this angle. Then I'm going to come down, and this is approximately 3 3/4 in from the edge. So right in there. Put my arc there for my closure, and then I should be able to line these two up, draw my straight line, and cut. And I can fold it over and see how close. That's very close. So I'll go ahead and cut on that line for that side of the flap. And if I was using 10-ounce veg tan thick leather, I wouldn't be able to do it this way and turn it inside out, because I wouldn't be able to flip it that way. So let's see how close we are this way. That closes real nice. Be a nice snap. Nice closure here. Again, this may need some trimming once we do the stitching on the sides and turn it inside out. So we'll see about that once we get to that point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this so I know where to stop my stitching, and I'll double check it one more time. So that way I know exactly where to put my holes for my stitches. So I've got it marked on the inside there. I can take my grooving tool, and I'm going to groove my stitch line. First thing I want to do though is I want to double check my length here. I'm going to do that with a little longer metal ruler, because I want to make sure that's perfectly square on the bottom. The sides, not so much. It grows a little bit as I go up because I want this to poof up. I don't want it to be perfectly flat. Alright, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and just square this off on the bottom and make sure I got a good square piece to start with. I'll double check it again. Trial and error without a pattern, but again, if you make a pattern, then you spend all the time making your pattern to make sure it's going to fit precisely. So it's pretty much a push one way or the other. There's my snap. So I think that's going to work really well. Let's go ahead and take my grooving tool so I can get my stitches in there perfectly. Get them in a nice perfect line. And I will have to readjust this. I believe I had it set pretty thin. So I'll lock that down. I'm going to start right here where I have my mark on the other side, approximately 3/16 of an inch in. And with this being such soft leather, I'm going to have to be careful about pushing too hard on the edge of my grooving tool. All I want is a groove mark. Remember, my stitches are going to be hidden inside, so all I really want is a mark to put my stitching holes in, kind of a guide, so I can push very lightly and just get the top layer off of that. I'll go all the way to there. Double check it. That looks good. So I'm ready to go ahead and put my stitching holes in. Double check on both sides where I want to start. And I'll use a 4-prong stitching punch. And a poly cutting board and an extra scrap piece of leather. The reason I do that is, number one, penetration. Number two, it won't dull my punch. so you can run through this fairly quickly. Then what I like to do on the other side, so that I know I have exactly the same amount of stitching holes, is I'll want to fold this over to where it's even. Like so. Make sure the bottom is square. I'll take my single stitching punch and put a hole all the way through both pieces. Make sure it lines up on my groove. Then I'll come down to this end, make sure I'm still lined up, make sure this is nice and flat, and I'll take my 2-prong punch, do the same thing in the last 2 holes at the other end, and double check that. There they are. So I can go ahead and take those out. I've already got my guide now to where my first and last holes need to be. I can flip that over. I can start on this end, on this side, and go ahead and continue putting my stitching holes on this side. Again, I'm going to stitch this inside out, then I'll flip it so I don't have, you don't see the stitches, and I'll stitch it off camera. I won't put you through that. Then you can, I'll bring you back to see the finished stitching before I flip it inside out, so you can see how I'm going to do that. Alright, so there's all the stitching holes. So I'm ready to go fold this over, do my stitching down both sides. I'll do that off camera, then I'll be back to show you how I'm going to finish that out. Alright, so I've got this stitched and I did it inside out. I'm ready to, I terminated these on the inside so you're not going to see them, so I didn't worry about doing an invisible stitch into the groove or anything since they were going to be hidden anyway. I'll still seal them up by melting the ends of the threads in the wax, flattening them down so they can't come undone. Now I can go ahead and start turning this inside out. And this being such a small pouch, it may be easier said than done. I'm going to try to start in a corner and push that corner in and then go to the other one and see how that works so I can get a hold of the leather from the inside, and then just keep working this around as I'm keeping tension on it, and then I can flip it, start flipping that inside out. Now again, I'm going to have to get these corners pushed out. If I would have had any thicker leather, this would have been really, really difficult to do. But I'm getting it. It's coming slowly. You can see I'm starting to get my seam. I can take just this little dowel rod and push down in the corners to get my corner pushed out. I'll do the same on the other side. It looks like I still have some work to do with my finger there. These little wooden dowel rods work so good for this. You heard that pop. So I've got a really good strong pouch now. Let's see, that fits in there perfectly. It'll even fit down where the muzzle goes down into this corner. The handle goes down into this corner, and what that's going to do is hide that handle down as I fold this top part over. And where that's going to snap closed. Now, what I want to do is I want to geometry wise, I want to clean this up. I want it to look better than it does at this point, because remember, I did all that just by sight. So what I want to do, I'm going to leave these little ears out here. You can see how they stick out a little bit. I'm going to leave those because that's what I'm going to put my D-rings on. But I'm not sure if I want to leave that much on there. So I'm going to have to, first of all, again, clean this front up here. If I want it round, again, I can take my tape and I can take my ruler, make sure that I'm in the center of this. That's 7 inches. So I'm right in the center of that tape roll. And then I can go ahead and mark it so that I know I'm in the center. So I've got my curvature here. You could tell how much of a difference. This is about a 1/2 inch and this is about a 1/4 inch. So it was off a little bit symmetrically. Then what I want to do is I want to lay this as flat as I possibly can, and I want to work this line back up to this corner of the pouch itself. What that's going to do, it's going to get rid of a lot of that bulkiness. Let me double check it after I've made that mark. Yeah, that's definitely going to get rid of that. I'll do the same on the other side. Then I can go ahead and cut those two pieces. And I'll cut it just to the inside of that line, so I can get rid of the line as I make my cut. I can start rotating this. Keep my blade as straight up and down as I possibly can so I don't get an angle on my leather. So I'm just slowly cutting. I have a good sharp blade, making sure I don't make any mistakes. Alright, so I finished trimming that out, and what I found was I was putting this in like this. That let that part stick up. That's where it was going to end up, so it was real nice, right? Well, look what I found out. I was trimming it and fitting it again, and if I turn it over upside down, it slides perfectly in there. So I'm going to change the orientation of the way I'm going to put that in there. So what that does is it lengthens my flap here. This looks nicer, so I'm going to change this. So what I'm going to do is measure it again, make sure that I'm in the center, and then I'm going to use a smaller radius. If I can find, here's one, got an electrical tape roll here. So come up and I'm going to use the inside. Do the same thing on both sides. I'm just going to eyeball it. You can measure it if you want. Then I will make me a straight line from those two radiuses. Make that cut. And that'll totally change the look of this flap, the closure part. I want to keep rotating that so I can see where I'm cutting. And then what that does is that makes me a flap that's not so round like this. The radius isn't so tight. So I'll slide that back in there, fold that over, and look, that's much nicer looking than that round radius that I had using this. So I just used the inside of the smaller electrical tape roll, and then that shortened this up, made it look much nicer. So my next step is I got to get me a snap in there before I put my D-rings in, so I know exactly where I'm going here. And I have to allow a little bit for my magazine that goes in there. So let's go ahead, and my D-rings are silver, so I'm going to use a silver snap. I'll mark it here. Get my poly board. That's what I like to do my punching on. It doesn't dull my punches. Then I can put this back in, again back to a lot of dry fitting, but I want it to look perfect. So put this back on. And I'll mark the inside through the hole that I just punched. Take this back out. I don't have a poly board that small, so I'll put in 3 layers of really heavy, thick leather, and I'll slide that in, and that's what I'll punch my hole against. That way I know I'm not going to go through that many thicknesses of leather into the back of my bag. Now, with this being softer than my poly board, cutting board, that's why I had to hit it so many times to get through. So there's my holes for my snap. I'll go ahead and grab my hardware, and again I'm going to use silver, so I'll get a male and a female set here. My button, and then I'll get my anvil and my setter. Shut that so in case I hit something and it goes flying, I don't explode hardware all over the place. And I am going to use this setup again. And I'll put my anvil right under that. Put my hardware through the back side. Make sure that my anvil's right on that piece. And you could just do it by feel out here because this leather is not super thick. Then I can go ahead and put this piece on. Take my setter. And I like to rotate my tool as I set that snap down in there. Keeps it nice and even instead of trying to bend it over to one side or the other. Take that out. We can put our button in the front. Put the female part of the snap on here. We'll put our button on our curve part of the anvil. Take the setter and do the same thing. sure that's on there good and tight. Make sure it snaps right. There's our snap in place. Let's put in our package here. Snug that down. That way it doesn't move around on us. And there's the finished product other than the strap. So I'm going to end this video here. So we got the finished product for our carry cross shoulder bag for concealed carry. And then I'll, on the next video next week, come back and check it out. We'll do the D-rings and the strap. So it turned out good. Snap works great. We're gonna put some D-rings on this. You'll be able to carry it over your shoulder, on your back, across your front, however you want to carry this. And that just kind of gives you a different avenue for concealed carry. So I appreciate you coming along, appreciate you watching, and as I always say, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.